Well, anyway, we're gonna go ahead and talk about this game that is called Metroid before we move on to Kid Icarus. All
Do
right,
it.
so oh god, I didn't drop my controller. Not even almost. Okay, so Metroid, original Metroid. Yeah, Joe's like, what is even going on? We don't even know. That was just craziness. There were so many Metroids on screen that the screen was just like literally dying on us. It's
Yeah,
just
it
like,
was.
yeah. So I think that's the first thing we should talk about. There's definitely fun to be had in this game for sure. But it's as an NES game, it definitely shows age, not just in graphics, because you know it's 8-bit, you can't do anything about that. But just the fact that if there's just enough enemies on screen, this game will just like the frames will just like chug in a
It
lot
starts
of
to play in slow mo.
exactly like it's like becoming a slideshow with all the enemies, which is definitely not a great thing. Like even considering the time that this game came out, because you know there's a lot of NES games that came out where they didn't throw so many enemies on screen at you that it destroyed the frame rate. You know. So that's definitely one knock on this game for sure. That can
Agreed.
happen, as well as the fact that when you're going to through doors, if an enemy is just like right behind you, your just health will just keep going down until you're through the door. And if you run into like a particularly long loading screen, then that could just be your health forfeit. Because that's what happened
Yeah,
to
it's like
me.
a
It
full
happened to
second
you.
animation to get through that.
But all those technical issues aside, let's just talk about the game itself, Metroid as a game. So what's your basic thoughts that you have so far, Wesley?
It's interesting. It's a game from 1986 or 87, and you can definitely feel that when you're playing. What is that? That's 34 years old.
Yes,
Yeah, you
sir.
can tell that that's an old game. It's not necessarily. I mean, it's fun, but what I think is more interesting in it is the fact that it's like you can tell how much of a blueprint it is for future games to come. And I think, like we talked about during the stream, it was the more rough around the edges version of Metroid that eventually spawned games that many people consider masterpieces, like Super Metroid and stuff like that.
For
But this
sure.
being my first Metroid game that I've ever played, it definitely kicked my butt. But I'm kind of intrigued. I kind of want to go and try to beat it myself now. Doesn't
Yeah.
seem like that'll be possible because that end section is really tough.
And
But
they threw it right in front of
um,
us too. Like we were like thrown right in
yeah,
front of that, and it was still very difficult just because of how much damage those Metroids do and how
yeah.
unwilling they are to just let you go. And there's so
hmm
many.
Like
Like
five at once, and you just can't do anything.
there, I can tell you for a fact in the remake of this game, Zero Mission, there was not that many on screen. Like there was like when I said earlier that Metroids, even in the game called Metroid, are rare. I did mean that. Like in Zero Mission, you do see a lot at the end, because we're at the end section, but there was not
hmm
that many. Like I think they
No,
realized that
no.
maybe it was a bit much. That they probably just
Yeah,
like
I think
toned it
so.
down a little bit for the segment. But yeah, what you said is very true. Um, yeah, Drill says he hasn't played Metroid either. Yeah, there's certain Metroid games that are good to start off with. Again, my very first one that I ever played was Fusion, and again, it's the fourth game in the series, but it's not like Metroid has a really heavy story. So like, even if you started a game like
hmm
Fusion, you're not going to be really put off, especially since Fusion kind of recaps what happened in the first three games to some degree before you start. So, and even if you did, and even if there's anything you didn't clear, you can get a quick synopsis of all three games very quickly. I think before Fusion, the game that had the most plot was Super Metroid, and even that was pretty light. But anyway, I digress. Talking about Metroid specifically, yeah, like you said, it's a blueprint for sure. Like, it's what led into the Metroidvania genre. So this game is very important because it
hmm
created an entire different genre of. It changed what single player games could be. I mean, side scrolling games could be because we've been playing games like up to this point. Like last month was completely dedicated to the Super Mario Brothers games, for example, which of course are very good
hmm
games, but they're very much like really good platforming games that are just about getting to the end of the level. Where Metroid kind of introduced something new, where now you could like go that way, you can go that way. Eventually, some degree, you eventually would have to go on the path because we tried going to other ways, and eventually it's like, oh, we don't have any missiles, so we can't go that way right now. So
But that's how the game teaches you, which is cool. Because you're like,
exactly,
why
but
can't I get to this door? And then in your head, you're supposed to be like, oh, it's because I need a stronger weapon. And then you go find
exactly,
missiles.
exactly. And then later Metroid games would refine that even more by making that you can really just like eventually, ultimately, like you still need certain weapons to go certain places. That's always been a thing.
hmm
You can't sequence break except for like one game. But I'll talk about that in a second. But otherwise, yeah, you do have to eventually. Oh, you got disconnected. No.
What's up?
You got disconnected.
Oh no.
You can come back
Wait,
in.
I did?
Yeah, it said you got disconnected. You should be able to join again in 456, I think. But anyway, while you're doing that,
Oh, on Switch. Oh, I let my Switch. Oh, I think you're talking about the Discord. I was like,
Oh,
I
no,
know
no,
I'm
no,
safe.
no.
Oh,
Yeah. You can come back in.
oh, my
456.
Switch. Yeah, the screen turned off. That's what it was.
Oh, okay. Okay, you can come back in and I'll keep talking. Anyway, but yeah. So that's always been a thing in Metroid, and this is very much where it started. That being said, as far as the game itself, the fact that the game it's the first one, so there's a lot that they had to learn about it. But the fact that the game doesn't even have a map is like
Crazy.
It's crazy. So you really have to, if you want to like seriously play the game, you either need to use a guide or you need to like memorize paths, which I think that acts more out of people than I think most people would be willing to do these days for this game.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to recommend. Here's the thing. This game now, Metroid, if you have a Switch, you have it. It's free if you have Nintendo Switch Online. So more people are going to ultimately have access to that. That being said, it's really hard for me to recommend this game to a lot of people when zero mission exists. And the only reason I wouldn't like wholeheartedly recommend that one is because that's not readily accessible. That's a GBA game. So you need something that plays the GBA. Or you could do it the way I did it, which is I played on the Wii U. Like all three of you that have a Wii U out there could download it on the Wii U Virtual Console. So like it's not easily accessible. Memorize like a real gamer, Jarrell says. And Jarrell says I have a big nerd crush on the both of you.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Jarrell's good people.
Jarrell is great people. Jarrell's fantastic people. But yeah, I mean, as a free version of the game, like Metroid is very low on story content. But if you want to, I guess let's go ahead and segue into the big question that we have to answer at this series. Does it hold up? And I'll let you answer as well. But in my opinion, Metroid Original, it can be fun. But I'm going to say it really doesn't, in my opinion. Like, I'd say if you're a hardcore Metroid fan, you should play at least a little bit just to see where it comes from. And definitely try out these special versions so you can see Ridley. And if you're a pro gamer enough, you can get to Mother Brain and just see how it ends, I guess. I'm glad that the special versions are there, so at least you have a little bit of easier way to get to those big set pieces in Metroid, or you can try to do the full game like a boss. Like, there's options there for you for sure. But, yeah, it's there and it's free. Metroid fans should try it. But if you, like, seriously want to complete the game, I highly recommend just to find a copy of Zero Mission. Moreover, if you finish Zero Mission, you unlock the original Metroid game in the cartridge of Zero Mission.
Oh, wow, really?
So you can,
That's cool.
Yeah, and I think that even applies to the Wii U version. So if you have Zero Mission, you have both Zero Mission, and you have the original NES Metroid in it as well. So you can go back to that one even. I think that's my personal recommendation. You should try to find a way to play. If you really like Metroid, you should try to find a way to play Zero Mission as opposed to OG Metroid, because that game looks a lot better. Has a post game story that wasn't in the original, and it has a map. So
that's really cool. I had no idea they did that. That's like a fun little surprise. Keep a game, get another game.
Yeah. So what are you thinking, Wesley? How are you feeling in the whole hold up situation for Metroid Original?
It's tough. I mean, I guess you could say it holds up for what it is. You know, if you know what Metroid is and you go to play it, you're going to be like, oh yeah, this feels like Metroid. Although the frame rates dropping is not great. That definitely sucks, and it makes someone like me who's never played the game before not want to play it.
Mm-hmm.
And in my head, I'm thinking, okay, so it's not a super story-heavy game, and on the same service, Nintendo Switch Online, you know, there's also Super Metroid available, which I've never played, but people say it's like a masterpiece.
Super Metroid is good. I mean,
unless you're like really trying to get through every single Metroid game, I feel like the best way to jump into Metroid on Switch right now would be to just jump straight to Super Metroid.
Yeah.
Because I imagine it plays better, and maybe doesn't have the frame rate drops that this first game does. Who knows? But
you know what? Actually, now that you say that, I partially take back my earlier statement about Fusion. Fusion does not recap the entire Metroid series. Super Metroid does. Super Metroid right at the beginning, Samus is like a full-on monologue. Obviously not voice acted, but it's her like and her thoughts, where she summarizes what happened in the original Metroid, and she summarizes what happens at the end of Metroid 2, which is important for Super Metroid's plot. So, yeah, definitely play Super Metroid, because that game, I think, is still very good. I mean, we'll eventually get to that on the show, but Super Metroid is still very good. Fusion, more than anything, I think more recap Super Metroid as opposed to the all the other past ones.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, Fusion is like one of the only games that like actually does sequence breaking. Like where you could like, there's actually a point in Fusion where you could like skip through a whole bunch of the game. And like I was mentioning earlier when we were playing the game, Fusion has has more of a story element to it. Like you actually hit checkpoints where like story is being given to you as opposed to other Metroid games. And
okay, cool.
there's like a character that you don't meet until like the very end of the game. That's like kind of like a shadowy figure. But if you sequence break and go to a place you're not supposed to, the computer that guides Samus to the adventure will literally break the fourth wall and be like, Samus, you're not supposed to be here yet. How'd you get here?
What?
Yeah, the dialogue literally like, how'd you get here? And then the shadowy figure that's supposed to play a big part later appears in the computer and says, wow, yeah, this really is cool. Should we just tell her how the game ends now since she's clearly doesn't care about the progression? It's like, no.
So awesome.
We'll just let her continue from this point forward. And then the cutscene will proceed as if you normally got there, like, by normal progression. But just, like, I thought that was so hilarious.
Cool. Yeah, I love little Easter eggs like that.
It's very hard to find, but they put it in there just in case people accessed it. So I think that was really cool. But yeah, that's my thought on Metroid Original. It's definitely worth looking for the historical value. But as far as like actually finishing it, if you actually want to like finish the original Metroid, I would highly recommend tracking down A Way to Play Zero Mission. That game is great, and it'll get you the original story and the original Metroid if you really want to go to that afterwards. Any other thoughts before we move on?
No, I think that's all of them. It's an interesting game. The music was really great. I love the
music. Music was good. I would give it the music. Like it's NES music, but it's like very very good NES music, and it really gets. You know, a lot of the Metroid songs just come back in later games, and they're just like even more fleshed out. So I love it for that. Yeah, sounds good. All right, so now we're gonna go ahead and look at Kid Icarus.